Hi, welcome to the Behavioral Health Seminar, Winter Wellness, Seasonal Affective Disorder. My name is Peyton Jeffsinski. I am our Behavioral Health Program Administrator here at God's Love We Deliver, and I also oversee the Connected program. And I'm going to be joined today by Katie Leonard, who is a nutrition educator here at God's Love. So in today's wellness seminar, we're going to cover a few topics. First, we're going to define what seasonal affective disorder, also called SAD, is. We're going to refer to it as well as the winter blues. And why do we get the winter blues? What we can do to implement meaningful behavior changes to address these things, and also some nutrition in the winter, and how our meals can help you with something like winter blues. And finally, we're going to end on having a plan. So something about the gut-brain axis and also some spices that you might enjoy in our meals that could also help improve your mood in the winter in your own food. So first, I wanted to open with a quote. I love this quote. It's about winter, and Edith Sitwell was a wonderful 20th century poet. And I think that these words really exemplify both her writing style and a nice positive spin on winter. A lot of times when we're talking about winter, we're talking about some of the effects of it, like today, where we can be cold and maybe a little more lonely, isolated, and it can be really a hard time and a sad time for people. But in this quote, I think we remember that winter is also a time for finding warmth and reconnecting to people and staying home. And there's a lot of benefits and lovely moments in the winter. So first, what is seasonal affective disorder, or SAD? This is a type of depression that occurs during specific seasons, which is usually the fall and mostly the winter, circulating around times where there is less sunlight. So we're referring to this right now as the winter blues because most people experience some sort of sadness in the winter. Um, it's not always seasonal affective disorder, but it can be, right? That's a level, that's a certain type of diagnosis or experience that's a little more severe than just, feeling a little bit down in the winter. So we're calling it the winter blues, but it's possible that if you're watching this and you connect to a lot of the things that we're talking about today, that you might have seasonal affective disorder. It's far, far more common than we believe that it is. And it's not often very much talked about. And it can include feelings like sadness, hopelessness, worthlessness, as well as changes in your sleep, your appetite, or your routine in the winter. And you could also feel difficulty concentrating on things, like how you might be able to concentrate in the summer. So I know for me, I feel lower energy in the winter. Like my days feel a lot longer. I feel a lot more fatigued doing simple tasks, things that I feel like if I were doing them in the summer, I would be able to go right from this to that, and I would be maybe more talkative or more enthusiastic. Whereas in the winter, it could feel like when I wake up, I'm already tired. So I notice these differences seasonally, and you might notice them as well. And that's what we reference when we're talking about the winter blues. And why do we get these? There's quite a few reasons why we get the winter blues. First, I want to acknowledge the possibility of a family history. If you know someone in your family that doesn't really seem like themselves during the winter, or you might notice, just as we're talking about it here, that there's a pattern for you, you might have the winter blues. And if you are somebody who knows that you have a depression diagnosis, you experience depression, or you have a family history of depression, so you can think about your parents, your grandparents, even aunts, uncles, or siblings. It puts you at higher risk of having the winter blues because your depression symptoms might be prolonged or even increased during the winter. So a lot of people who have depression feel that it gets worse during the winter months. So living with a mental health diagnosis in general, right? It doesn't always have to be depression. We're more likely to experience these symptoms during winter because it can be a triggering time for people. And again, usually we're socializing less in the winter, we're spending more time alone, and those things can be exacerbate your symptoms of a mental health condition. Also, here in New York, we are living pretty far from the equator. So it's cold, we're getting a lot less sun, and that means we have lower levels of vitamin D. Vitamin D, it gives you energy, it helps with your mood. And so these things make us a little more likely to be at risk of the winter blues. That means that we're getting shorter days, we're getting less sunlight, and that over time can lead to chemical changes in the brain, right? I think a lot of times there's stigma around these conversations. And when we think about the winter blues, people might feel like that's something that's made up or something that's more conversational. But in reality, we see these things. We see chemical changes in our brain during this time of year based on these things, based on shorter days, based on less sunlight, based on our mental health conditions getting worse. Those things are really happening inside of our brains and inside of our bodies, which is why it's important that we talk about it and we break down some stigma about it and we figure out what we can do to pick ourselves up during these hard months. In the winter, obviously, we're also getting less time outside, and you might be spending less time with people. It can be much harder to leave your house or for other people to want to leave their house. And a lot of our spots to hang out, especially for free, like outside up front of your building or maybe a porch or a park, are cold, covered in snow, or it's too cold to go outside. So we have to resort to either seeing people who can come over to our homes or calling people or communicating through our phones or maybe social media. And then there's also the post holiday season. So a lot of people kind of closer to the start of winter feel a real high during the holidays. Maybe that's the time of year where you get to see people who are important to you the most, maybe family or friends celebrating the holidays. And there's a lot of positive energy. And then after the holiday season, things really can take a crash for people where suddenly you're a lot more lonely, right? The holiday's over, there's less to look forward to, and we're now at the start slash the middle of the winter, and it feels like we have a long way to go until spring. So all of these things, and a lot of times all of these things put together, can contribute to why we feel the winter blues. And when do we know that it's gotten to a point that we need to get help? Because you might be somebody who just notices these small changes in yourself. You feel that you can cope with it through the winter. April or May comes quick enough and the weather changes and you're not too worried about it. But there's also another side of this where you might be feeling more severe symptoms and you might be someone who is at risk of seasonal affective disorder. And that is a great example of when to get help, when to turn to somebody to speak to. And we'll cover next some examples of things that can help you with this, forms of treatment. But when do you know when you're past that line, when it's time for you to seek help? Well, first, if you notice that you're withdrawing socially. So, like I said, there are obvious reasons that we might be able to spend less time with people in the winter. Some of our favorite hobbies might be closed or people's schedules change. But if you find that you're purposefully avoiding social interaction more than you would in another month, or you almost feel like you don't even want to speak to anybody anymore, and that might be odd for you, that's an example of social withdrawal. And that's a great sign that it's time to get help. Other examples are higher levels of irritation. Maybe you feel like your patience is a little bit lower in the winter or your temper is heightened. Also, if your substance use changes, a lot of times people are experiencing higher use of substances like alcohol or drugs in the winter. Again, because we're at home more, you might have more access to it and there's less to do. And these feelings like sadness, loneliness, worthlessness, hopelessness, those tend to make people use substances at a higher rate. So we want to be aware of that. Feelings like anxiety can increase as well. And if you're feeling highly anxious, maybe highly anxious about normal tasks, things you do every day, or anxious about leaving the home, anxious about social interaction, those are examples of a push towards seasonal affective disorder where it's really disrupting your system. And finally, we have two other really important symptoms: eating dysregulation. You might find that you're eating far more in the winter. You might find that you're eating far less in the winter, or maybe at really bizarre times. Even changes in your appetite might not be decisions that you're intending to make, but you find that your body is giving you cues to eat at different times or irregular times, like maybe too much or too little. That is a great example, as well as thoughts of suicide or self harm. These tend to increase in the winter for people. We see generally those statistics. So we know that there is a pattern between these hard winter months and a higher risk of suicide or self harm. And it's very, very important to be aware of those and to seek help if you're experiencing those feelings. Some examples of treatment. First, there is light therapy. This one sounds a little bit funky, but it really has incredible results. For seasonal affective disorder, they make something called SAD lamps, because again, seasonal affective disorder, SAD. SAD lamps, they are LED lamps. They are incredibly bright, and they essentially transmit a type of light that is similar to what we get from the sun. So, in your average fluorescent lighting, like I'm sitting in right now, I'm not getting any of the benefits that I would get from sitting out in the sunshine during a warmer month. But in a UV light, like a SAD lamp, you're getting a very, very bright light that is essentially giving your body those same messages, like you're back in the sun. And it can raise your vitamin D levels, and often found to raise your mood. So it's something to look into, as well as antidepressant medication. If you're not on medication for antidepressants and you would be looking to be, you would want to see a psychiatrist. But this could start with just speaking to your PCP, speaking to a provider that already knows you. They can help you with a referral. They might be able to help you with a prescription, but expressing to them why you're feeling a need for this would be the first step. And Katie will come next to talk about nutrition and how our nutrition can impact our treatment against seasonal affective disorder in the winter. And we also have a few forms of therapy that are particularly useful during the winter months. So, first is cognitive behavioral therapy. This is called CBT. CBT is about connecting our feelings with our actions and our thoughts. It's really bringing all of those three things together, and it's very effective in treating things like PTSD, depression, or anxiety. So, when we're thinking about seasonal affective disorder, which is a form of depression, CBT is the type of therapy that is often used to address that. Then we have group therapy, where you're getting to more in a supportive group setting. You're getting to speak with other people who are experiencing this. And what's really unique about this form of therapy is that in the winter, when we're low on social time with others, that's an opportunity to meet people and be talking to people more than just a one-on-one setting. So it's something to consider, especially in the winter. Then there's also vitamin D supplements. These are very easy to find. You can find them at most stores. They're over the counter. This is not a prescription. Sometimes they are like little orange gummies. Those are the ones that I take. And these are really great to trigger your body to get vitamin D in the way that we're low on it in the winter. So it can help you, just something to take in the morning or take with your other meds if you're on a med schedule. That could be a small little addition. You might feel some effects from adding vitamin D back into your routine. And then finally, prioritizing socializing however we can and trying to connect to nature or what we feel is left of it in the winter. I know it's cold, but it's still important to get outside and get moving to whatever ability you have. You could even just open a window and take a deep breath for a short time. I know it would be cold outside, but that's an opportunity to get a little fresh air and improve your overall mood, refresh your thoughts, and again, connect to nature in the way that we can in the winter. And now I'm excited to toss it to Katie, who is going to be speaking about nutrition in the winter.
Thank you. Let's see. Let me just grab my notes. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition in winter. We're going to talk about eating seasonally, which is possible even during cold months. We'll talk about how we can use nutrition to support our immunity. And we'll talk about how God's love we deliver meals fit into all this. So eating a variety of fruits and vegetables is important year-round to support physical and mental health, including during the winter months. And a lot of produce is available in New York during the winter. Some varieties are available fresh, and others are available because they store well through the winter months. Examples of these are apples and pears, root vegetables, lots of hardy greens like cabbage, kale, collards, winter squash, and lots of citrus fruits are widely available during the winter. And, we can support our immunity in lots of other ways. In addition to a variety of nutritious foods, we can support immunity during cold months by making sure we stay hydrated with plenty of water, non-sugar sweetened beverages, hydrating foods like fruits and vegetables and soups. You can also supplement that hydration with a humidifier. Saline nasal spray is great. It's available at all the drugstores. It's a non-medication spray that helps keep your nasal passages moistened, which supports immunity. Um, and as I mentioned before, or as Peyton mentioned, getting exercise, getting outside when possible is also really important for supporting mood. And this can also help you rest and sleep better. And if you're a client of God's Love, you're receiving meals from us. God's Love meals include a variety of fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, and whole grains. And since our meals are low in sodium, our kitchen uses a wide variety of herbs and spices to flavor the food without adding a lot of sodium or fat, or sugar. And herbs and spices provide antioxidants and anti-inflammatory and other compounds that support brain health and mood. So adding spices to foods and drinks over the winter months can be comforting and support good health and well-being.
Thank you so much, Katie. I always learn so much when you're speaking, and I feel like I wouldn't have guessed some of those things that were in season in the winter. I think it's easy for me to assume that in the winter everything's out of season, but I did just have a pear last week and it was great. So it's a reminder to always be looking at what's in season. Mother Nature knows that we need good produce even through the winter months. So look into that. And spices, I think, is a really unique thing to bring up because they're often really affordable. You can have one jar of some sort of spice that you can use for months and months and months. I'm always surprised when I run out of a spice because I'm like, I never thought I'd see the end of this. And so it's something to think about, and it can really add some dimension, especially to our meals. We hear from people that they like to spice and season our meals in different ways. So it's an opportunity to also bring new life into something that maybe you've had before. Something to think about. And when we talk about nutrition, there is this diet psychological relationship, also called the gut brain axis. So, what this means is that our nutrition and gut health impacts our mental health conditions and the symptoms of it. So, when we talk about clients of God's love, we have a lot of clients who we serve that have diabetes. And when you hear the word diabetes, you know that that has some sort of impact on your diet, that has some sort of impact on what you can and can't eat or what you choose to eat. But in reality, every illness that we serve, we treat that same way. Where even mental health conditions, even a diagnosis like depression or anxiety, we are going to make a meal plan that prioritizes nutrition for your same benefit, just in the same way. And when we eat nutritious meals, nutritious food, we have all these microorganisms in our digestive tract that produce things like serotonin and dopamine, which are our happy transmitters. Those are the things, the chemicals that go to our brain that tell us that we're happy and they influence our mood. And in the same way, malnutrition, eating a lack of nutritious foods, can contribute to things like depressive symptoms or anxious symptoms because you're not giving your body enough of serotonin and dopamine that comes from this nutritious food. So there is a lot more of a relationship there than we're thinking. And our bodies do trick us because at times when we're sad, we want comfort food. And for a lot of people, their comfort food might not be the most nutritious. So of course, we'll talk about, experiencing things in moderation, and we know that our meals are our nutritious option at all points in time, but they're probably not the only things that you're eating. So it's something to consider when you feel these feelings of loneliness or sadness. How do you respond to them? And is there any impact on your diet? Is there anything that you can examine there or change? And finally, when we're feeling these feelings, it's good to have a plan. If you're feeling fatigue or feeling slow, one of the best options is to get outside. That might be, like I said, I wake up in the winter at times and I still feel tired, even if I got a full night's rest or even too much sleep, which is another way that you might feel fatigued. And one of the best things for me is to get outside for even a brief morning walk or just fresh air in the morning. Again, if depending on your ability, that might just be opening a window and getting some fresh air into your house, right? Breathing it in, breathing it out, and kind of doing a reset. And that will alert your body, like, I'm awake. I have energy. I'm here, and that can fight feelings of fatigue. If you're feeling physical aches or pains, it's good to focus on hydration. Sometimes in the hot months, we drink a lot more water because we're dehydrated from heat. But in the cold months, it's easier to think less about water, especially if you're someone who likes a warm beverage, like a warm tea, warm coffee, then we're thinking less about water. So it's good to be focusing on hydration no matter the winter months. Like we mentioned before, a really serious symptom potentially of seasonal affective disorder is thoughts of death or suicide or self harm. And in this example, my best advice to you is to call 998. 998 on your phone, like you would call 911, is a hotline, a crisis hotline that would provide you with a trained professional who would be able to speak with you in that moment and give you some great advice. If you're having a loss of interest in activities, doing the things you like to do, or even keeping up with your basic routine and your basic needs, call a friend, call a family member, speak to somebody that you're close to, speak to a neighbor. You can even call our team, right? That's something that we're interested in is your ability to meet your needs, and we can help you find community in your area that will bridge maybe some passion back towards your hobbies or towards socializing. We're your meal provider, but we are here for you in greater ways. Also, if you're oversleeping, try to commit to an alarm and get out of bed. This might take a few tries. I know we have another webinar on building routines where we talk about alarms as well. It's very easy to snooze an alarm and not visit it again, but try this routine. Try getting into a pattern where you are having your alarm go off and you're getting out of bed. Your body really appreciates a solid sleeping schedule, and it can make you feel less fatigued in the long run. And then finally, if you're craving sweets, you can start by trying to eat a piece of fruit. For example, fruits with nuts or nut butter or a low fat yogurt or cheese. These types of healthy fats or lean proteins are really good for you. And at times they can feel a little sweet. And of course, some of our meals come with desserts, and you might be getting a true sweet treat like a cookie. Try to set aside a special time to enjoy that each day, and you might let yourself await it. Could be something to help you get through a long day or a cold day. And if you have another form of a sweet treat, try to enjoy it in moderation. You can look at serving sizes on the package and try to just, keep in mind that how you're balancing it with other forms of nutritious food, like some of the awesome produce options that Katie mentioned here. I wanted to end this today with our contact information. We, of course, have our big address and website, but we also have our client services department where you can call with any issues with your meals, your delivery, your meal plan. They can transfer you to nutrition or get you to who you need to speak to. And then this is my name, my position, and my email as well. And I also have Katie's information here. Thank you so much for watching this today, and I hope that you have a wonderful winter full of love, care, and comfort.